My name is Isabella, and I'm 28 years old. I grew up feeling like a discordant note in my family's perfectly composed symphony. My parents, both renowned classical musicians, saw my passion for engineering and robotics as an ungraceful, mechanical pursuit, a stark contrast to my older brother Leo's effortless musical genius. On my 18th birthday, they tried to steer me towards a music conservatory, ignoring my MIT acceptance. Then, at my high school robotics competition, my brother and father publicly dismissed my national winning project as a glorified toy. When I confronted them, they presented an ultimatum: embrace music or be disowned. I chose my own path, walked away, and began a grueling journey of independence, only to discover later that they had systematically cut all ties, erasing me from their lives. What parts of your life has your family refused to understand, just because it didn't fit their expectations? Leave a comment below and let me know where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe to hear what happened later in this story. I grew up in the hallowed halls of a brownstone in Boston's Back Bay, a place that didn't just echo with sounds, it reverberated with the grandiosity of classical music. Our surname, Reed, was more than just a name. It was synonymous with an artistic legacy, whispered with reverence within the refined circles of the city's philharmonic and conservatories. Every ornate detail of our home, from the sound-dampening velvet drapes in the parlor to the grand Steinway in the living room, seemed meticulously curated to serve this singular, artistic purpose. My mother, Elara Reed, a woman of porcelain skin and perpetually poised hands, was a retired concert pianist whose fingers still danced over imaginary keys, often miming arpeggios while conversing. She curated our lives with the unforgiving precision of a conductor leading a Mahler symphony. Every detail, every social engagement, every educational choice, serving a greater aesthetic purpose. My father, Julian Reed, a man whose silver hair and intellectual gaze commanded respect from a podium, was a renowned musicologist and former conductor himself. He enforced the family's artistic purity with an almost spiritual devotion, his voice capable of both the most delicate whisper and the most thunderous pronouncement. He frequently declared, with unwavering conviction, "The soul of a reed finds its true voice in harmony, Isabella, not in dissonance." Our legacy is built on the beautiful, the transcendent, the timeless. Then there was my older brother, Leo. 3 years my senior, he was the golden boy of the Reed dynasty, a natural heir to their melodic kingdom. He was a cello prodigy, a child virtuoso whose melancholic melodies and effortless virtuosity earned him accolades and scholarships since he was barely old enough to hold the bow. His bedroom, unlike my own, was a veritable shrine to musical achievements, filled with gleaming trophies, framed concert programs from his countless performances in prestigious halls, and sashes from various youth orchestra competitions. He was the natural successor, the living embodiment of everything my parents held dear and believed the Reed name stood for. And then there was me. I, Isabella, was the dissonant chord in their perfectly orchestrated lives. From a young age, while Leo spent hours practicing Bach's suites, the complex, soul-stirring notes filling the house, I was often found in the dusty corner of our attic, dismantling obsolete appliances or poring over circuit diagrams pilfered from old electronics magazines. My allowances weren't spent on sheet music or concert tickets, but on obscure electronics kits ordered from catalogs, their components tiny, metallic promises of creation. My mother would often sigh, a sound laden with elegant disappointment. "Isabella, darling, your hands are meant for the keyboard, for coaxing beauty from the ivories, not for tinkering with greasy wires. It's so ungracefully." My father, ever the academic, would try to frame it philosophically, his brow furrowed with a mixture of concern and intellectual dismissal. The greatest inventions, Isabella, arise from understanding nature's inherent rhythms, the mathematical elegance of a well-composed piece. Perhaps if you truly listened to a Beethoven symphony, you'd grasp the profound elegance of its design, its inherent logic. Only then can you truly innovate. His words, meant perhaps to guide, felt instead like a profound misunderstanding of the very logic I sought. Their attempts to steer me towards music were relentless, forming a pervasive background hum to my childhood. Piano lessons, violin lessons, forced choir practice, I endured them all, my heart heavy with the gnawing realization that my fingers yearned for the tactile click of a circuit board, the satisfying thrum of a soldering iron, not the smooth, cool glide over ivory keys. I found no joy in scales, no solace in arpeggios. My grades, always impeccably high, particularly in mathematics and physics, were simply seen as academic diligence, a consolation prize for my apparent lack of artistic soul. "She's so good with numbers," my mother would tell guests with a thinly veiled air of elegant disappointment. "If only she had a similar ear for music. It's such a pity." The irony was lost on them. Family gatherings, usually held in our cavernous living room where the acoustics were designed to enhance Leo's impromptu performances, were especially torturous. They were filled with polite inquiries about my hobbies, which quickly devolved into gentle, persistent suggestions about the benefits of appreciating the classics, or how a true lady always has an appreciation for the arts. No one seemed to notice that while Leo charmed audiences with his effortless bowing and soulful gaze, I was quietly building a rudimentary robot from scrap parts in that dusty attic corner, its clumsy movements a nascent promise of ingenuity. Or that I was devouring weighty textbooks on advanced algorithms, their complex logic a far more compelling narrative than any opera. My small, hidden sanctuary in the attic, permeated with the scent of old wood and the faint metallic tang of newly soldered wires, was my true stage, filled with intricate diagrams, colorful wires, and the faint, almost imperceptible hum of nascent technology, not musical scores. It was here, amidst the organized chaos of my inventions, that I felt most authentically myself, most alive. The pressure mounted exponentially as I entered my teenage years. My parents had already begun to discuss Leo's future with a single-minded focus, mapping out his professional trajectory with the meticulousness of a composer outlining a symphony. Juilliard, Curtis, a solo debut in Carnegie Hall, these were the milestones etched into their vision for him. For me, however, the discussions were vague, punctuated by hopeful suggestions that perhaps I would find a nice, musically inclined young man to marry or pursue a career that would support the arts from a respectable, understated distance, perhaps as a philanthropic patron. The very idea of me, Isabella Reed, venturing into something as unrefined as engineering, something so overtly mechanical, was simply unthinkable to them. It was a career, my father once declared during a particularly heated dinner conversation, after I expressed a budding interest in MIT's robotics program, for those who lack a deeper understanding of the soul's true melodies, Isabella. The Reed name is built on culture, on beauty, on the timeless elegance of human expression through music. Not on machines that clank and whir. That is a pursuit for those who lack a deeper understanding of the soul's true melodies. His words, delivered with such conviction, with an almost pitying tone, felt like a deliberate, targeted blow to my very identity. It wasn't just a dismissal of my interests. It was a fundamental rejection of who I was, of the very way my mind was wired. I remember retreating to my room that night, tears stinging my eyes, not from sadness, but from a burgeoning, fierce sense of defiant resolve. I would prove them wrong. I would build a life where my intellect and my passion for innovation were celebrated, not silenced. Their melodies might define them, but my algorithms would define me. It became increasingly clear that my very existence in the Reed household was a challenge to their carefully constructed reality, a sour note in their perfect composition. Every single conversation about my future revolved around how I could better align myself with their musical heritage. My mother once brought home glossy brochures for various liberal arts colleges with ostensibly strong music programs, placing them pointedly on my desk, deliberately covering my physics textbook. "Perhaps a dual major, darling," she'd suggest, her voice dripping with thinly disguised hope. "You could always minor in something practical, like mathematics, to support your musical endeavors, of course." The subtext was always loud and clear, a recurring refrain. Music first, everything else a distant, supporting role. My earnest attempts to explain the inherent beauty of coding, the elegant logic of algorithms, or the transformative potential of robotics were met with polite, uncomprehending smiles or, worse, dismissive chuckles. "It's just so mechanical," my father would say, as if mechanical were a dirty word, an antonym for everything refined and cultured. Where is the human touch, the passion? I began to spend more and more time in the school's newly established robotics lab, sacrificing lunch breaks and after-school clubs, finding solace and purpose in the whirring of machines and the glowing lines of code. There, amidst the smell of solder and the hum of nascent machinery, I found my true community, a small, dedicated group of fellow nerds who spoke my language. Our robotics team became my second family, a place where my ideas were not only welcomed but celebrated, where my intelligence was seen as a gift, not a burden. My mentor there, Mr. Davies, an eccentric but brilliant engineering teacher with wild, untamed hair and perpetually ink-stained fingers, truly saw my potential. "Isabella," he'd say, leaning over a circuit board with me, his eyes gleaming with shared enthusiasm, "your mind works in a way that truly understands systems. You have a gift for bringing abstract concepts to life, for seeing the hidden architecture of the world. Don't ever let anyone tell you that this isn't art in its own right." His words were the vital fuel that ignited my secret ambitions, solidifying my belief that my path, though strikingly different from my family's, was no less valid, and perhaps even more groundbreaking in its own silent way. My high school years became a meticulously choreographed dance of deception and hidden ambition. Outwardly, I maintained the facade of the compliant daughter, attending family concerts with a polite smile fixed on my face, enduring my weekly and dreadful piano lessons, and maintaining a feigned interest in Leo's ever-growing musical triumphs. I even learned to nod intelligently when discussions turned to obscure composers or the nuances of Baroque counterpoint. Inwardly, however, I was a whirlwind of secret ambition and furious coding, my mind alight with the possibilities of technology. My laptop became my most treasured possession, a portal to a world where my intellect was the only currency, where lines of code were my poetry and circuits my canvases. I devoured online courses in Python, C++, and JavaScript, teaching myself the intricate languages that would allow me to build the machines and systems I envisioned. Systems that could solve problems, innovate, and create. The profound satisfaction of a perfectly executed line of code, the thrill of seeing a complex algorithm function flawlessly, the tangible result of abstract thought. This was a profound joy that my family's world of scales and arpeggios, of perfectly tuned instruments, could never provide. The school's robotics lab, tucked away in the furthest corner of the science wing, became my true sanctuary. There, amidst the distinct smell of solder and the constant hum of machinery, I found my genuine community, a small, dedicated group of fellow nerds who understood the language of logic and innovation. Our robotics team became my second family, a place where my ideas were not only welcomed but fiercely celebrated. We spent countless hours designing, building, and programming, fueled by endless cups of stale coffee, cold pizza, and an unyielding, shared passion for innovation. My team leader, a senior named Alex, a brilliant but unassuming boy with perpetually ink-stained fingers, once told me, "Isabella, you're a natural. You don't just see the world, you see its underlying systems and solutions. It's truly inspiring to work with you." Their unwavering belief in me was a stark, invigorating contrast to the subtle dismissals and polite scorn I faced at home. When college application season arrived, I lived in a state of heightened anxiety, a constant knot of worry twisting in my stomach. Every conversation at the dinner table revolved around where Leo would be accepted for his advanced music studies, and my parents had already begun casually mentioning Vassar or Wellesley for me, implying, quite strongly, that a liberal arts education, perhaps with a focus on music history or art appreciation, would be more appropriate for a young woman of my background. The idea of me pursuing a STEM field, let alone at a technical powerhouse like MIT, was simply beyond their comprehension, almost an affront to their sensibilities. I secretly poured all my energy into my MIT application, meticulously detailing my robotics projects, the independent coding endeavors I'd undertaken in secret, and my research into artificial intelligence, compiling a portfolio that spoke volumes about my true passions. It wasn't just about getting into a top engineering school. It was about securing my escape, a tangible, physical step towards a future where I could be authentically myself, where my mind would be celebrated, not constrained. I remember the morning the MIT acceptance letter arrived in the mail. It wasn't in a flimsy envelope, easily dismissed, but a thick, substantial package promising weighty news. My hands trembled as I opened it, my heart pounding a frantic, excited rhythm against my ribs. Inside, a crisp letter, emblazoned with the distinctive MIT seal, confirmed my acceptance into their prestigious computer science and engineering program, along with a partial scholarship that, while not a full ride, was a significant validation of my academic merit. A small, involuntary gasp of pure joy escaped my lips, quickly stifled as I heard Madison's, my sister, who also made guest appearances in the family drama, footsteps in the hallway. I quickly shoved the precious envelope under my pillow, my victory a closely guarded secret. That night, I clutched the letter to my chest, the paper crinkling softly, feeling like a lifeline in my hands, a passport to a different, brighter future. The thought of telling my parents, however, filled me with a deep, pervasive dread, knowing their reaction would be far from celebratory. I knew their congratulations would be reserved for Leo's musical triumphs, never for my logical ones. The inevitable confrontation occurred a few weeks later, not in a calm discussion, but amidst a house still buzzing with triumphant melodies. My parents had just received news of Leo's full scholarship to Juilliard, a truly impressive feat, and the entire house was abuzz with triumphant melodies and proud pronouncements, the air thick with celebratory fervor. They called a formal family dinner, ostensibly to celebrate Leo's achievement, but I knew, with a sinking feeling, that it was also my cue, my moment to finally announce my own news. The conversation flowed easily at first, praise heaped upon Leo, his talent, his dedication, his burgeoning career. My mother gushed about his upcoming summer concert series, and my father spoke with pride about Leo's unwavering commitment to excellence. Then, sensing a lull, a moment of perfect, dramatic silence, I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I also heard back from MIT, I began, my voice a little shaky at first, but determined to be heard. A fork clinked loudly against a plate as my mother paused mid-chew, her elegant smile freezing into a brittle, unnatural expression. MIT, darling? Oh, isn't that engineering school? She asked, her tone betraying a hint of confusion mixed with profound disapproval, as if I had announced I was joining a circus. My father cleared his throat, adjusting his tie with a meticulous, almost nervous gesture. His gaze, usually sharp and penetrating, seemed to soften with a paternal yet misguided concern. Isabella, we've discussed this extensively. A woman of your sensitivities, of your background, would be far better suited to an institution with a more refined academic focus. Vassar, perhaps, or even a joint program with the New England Conservatory. We imagined you following in our footsteps, engaging with true artistry, cultivating a more graceful intellect. He dismissed computer science with a dismissive wave of his hand, labeling it a mechanical trade, a profession for introverts who prefer machines to human interaction, completely devoid of soul. My mother quickly interjected, her voice dripping with disdain. Vassar girls have such grace, such poise, Isabella. They cultivate a certain elegance. MIT is simply unfeminine. And the campus culture, dear, it's hardly conducive to developing the social graces required for our circles, for the life we envision for you. Her words, meant to dissuade, only solidified my resolve. The argument that ensued was less a debate and more an inquisition, a relentless barrage of their preconceived notions. They spoke of family tradition, a sacred mantra in our household, of our reputation in Boston's cultural elite, and of the Reed legacy, a heavy mantle they expected me to bear. My father even brought up distant relatives who had attended Ivy League liberal arts schools, as if their choices from decades ago somehow dictated my path. We have invested so much in your cultural education, Isabella, my mother lamented, her voice laced with genuine sorrow. All those expensive piano lessons, the countless opera tickets, the private art lessons. To throw it all away for circuits and code. It's simply baffling. A waste. I tried desperately to explain my passion, the profound intellectual stimulation I found in solving complex problems, the immense joy of creation through technology, the elegance of a perfectly designed system. but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears, or perhaps on ears simply unwilling to hear anything that deviated from their carefully composed score for my life. They could not, or would not, understand that my creativity found its expression not in music, but in logic. "You are deliberately choosing to be difficult, Isabella," my father said, his voice cold and cutting, "to disrespect everything we stand for, everything we have built." He then folded his hands, a gesture of finality. I retreated to my room that night, the MIT acceptance letter now feeling less like a lifeline and more like a declaration of war, a symbol of my defiant choice. The opulent silence of my room was filled with the echoes of their disappointment, but beneath it, a quiet, unyielding resolve began to harden within me. I would go to MIT, with or without their blessing, with or without their money. This was my life, and I would compose my own symphony, even if its notes were made of code. It was time for my algorithm to sing. The weeks leading up to high school graduation were not a period of celebration, but rather a quiet, cold war waged with thinly veiled contempt and deliberate omissions. My parents, still reeling from my steadfast refusal to consider any university other than MIT, had shifted their tactics from persuasion to subtle, yet pervasive, emotional manipulation. Every dinner conversation became a meticulously orchestrated performance designed to highlight Leo's triumphs and my perceived failings. They would often bring up Leo's bright and promising future at Juilliard, detailing his rigorous practice schedule, his upcoming European concert tour, and his flawless recitals, all while pointedly ignoring my academic achievements, my valedictorian status, or my burgeoning robotics projects. "Leo truly understands what it means to dedicate oneself to a craft, to honor a legacy," my mother would sigh dramatically, casting a pointed, disapproving glance in my direction. My father, ever the master of passive aggression, started leaving glossy brochures for a local music academy on my desk, subtly highlighting programs for aspiring accompanists, or music theorists, or even music educators. The message was clear, delivered without a single direct confrontation. There was still time to change my mind, to conform to their grand design, to choose the path they had so carefully laid out for me. The tension in our elegant home was palpable, thickening the very air we breathed. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells, each word chosen with excruciating care, lest it shatter the fragile peace. The unspoken expectation that I would eventually relent, that I would see the error of my ways and embrace the true, reed path, hung heavy in the atmosphere, suffocating me with its unspoken weight. They would frequently reminisce about my sweet childhood voice, suggesting I rejoin the church choir or take up singing lessons again. "You have such a beautiful instrument, Isabella," my mother would say, her voice laced with a manipulative nostalgia. "It's a shame to let it go to waste, darling. Such potential." My retort, delivered with a forced calm, that my instrument was my mind and my creativity lay in building, not performing, was consistently met with weary sighs and dismissive waves of the hand. The very idea of me pursuing a career in engineering, a field so far removed from their artistic sensibilities, seemed to genuinely baffle them, as if I were choosing to speak an alien language rather than embrace the beautiful, universal tongue of music. They simply could not, or would not, reconcile their idealized image of a reed daughter with a woman who preferred circuit diagrams to sheet music, or the hum of a server to the swelling crescendo of an orchestra. It was a cognitive dissonance they refused to resolve. The subject of my graduation dress became another subtle but potent battleground, a sartorial declaration of war. My mother insisted on accompanying me to various high-end boutiques, each one more opulent and intimidating than the last. She gravitated exclusively towards gowns that were overtly dramatic, with intricate lace, voluminous skirts, and shimmering embellishments, creations completely at odds with my minimalist taste and practical nature. "Darling, it's a performance," she'd declare, holding up a shimmering, impractical creation made of delicate silk and elaborate beading. "You must look the part of a graceful young woman, ready to embrace the elegance of life, prepared for your next stage." I, on the other hand, gravitated towards simpler, more structured dresses that offered comfort, a subtle sophistication, and, crucially, allowed for freedom of movement. Each dressing room, with its unforgiving mirrors and harsh lighting, became a quiet arena for our clashing visions, a silent battle of wills. "This one is too stark, Isabella," she'd say, wrinkling her nose at a tailored satin number, its clean lines offending her sensibilities. "It lacks a certain flow. No one will ever confuse you for a musician, for a reed, in that." After 5 exhausting, emotionally draining trips, she finally selected a pale blue chiffon gown with a delicate floral applique, insisting it embodied the lightness and beauty befitting a Reed daughter. A perfect blend of ethereal grace and family reputation. It was itchy, the boning dug painfully into my ribs, and the fabric clung in all the wrong places. But after hours of subtle argument and her thinly veiled threats of disappointing the family, I conceded, just to end the ordeal. My spirit, though bruised, was not broken. That night, however, fueled by a simmering rebellion and a quiet, defiant determination, I took matters into my own hands. Using the basic sewing skills I'd picked up from my practical grandmother and a good deal of engineering intuition, I meticulously altered the dress. I carefully replaced sections of the rigid boning with softer, more flexible material, subtly adjusted the shoulder straps to alleviate the digging pain, and even added a small, hidden pocket inside the skirt for my phone and, humorously, a tiny screwdriver. A silent nod to my true passions, a secret rebellion sewn into the very fabric of the garment. The exterior of the dress, to the casual observer, looked almost identical, still the elegant gown my mother had chosen, still the picture of Reed perfection. But the interior was transformed, a secret bastion of comfort, practicality, and personal defiance. For the first time in my life, looking at my reflection in the privacy of my room, I felt a surge of quiet triumph. It was a small act of defiance, a reclaiming of my body and my comfort in a garment that had been chosen by others to define me. It was a whisper of freedom. The morning of graduation dawned bright and oppressively humid, a typical Boston summer day, the air thick with a cloying moisture that promised to wilt any meticulously styled coiffure or delicate fabric. My mother burst into my room at precisely 6:30 a.m., a vision of determined energy, armed with an arsenal of professional makeup and high-end hair products, trailed by a specially booked stylist she had flown in from New York. "We have precisely 3 hours to transform you, Isabella," she announced, her voice brimming with a terrifying, almost manic enthusiasm. "Everyone who matters will be there, darling, from the society pages to potential benefactors, and we simply cannot have you looking anything less than impeccable. This is your debut, in a way." I, however, had other plans, plans born of that quiet defiance. "Mother," I said calmly, rising from my bed, my voice a little shaky but determined, "I've already decided how I'll do my hair and makeup. I'm going for a natural look, and I'll do it myself." Her face, usually a mask of serene composure, visibly tightened, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure annoyance. "Absolutely not," she hissed, her voice dropping to a dangerous, low whisper. "This is not a discussion, Isabella. You need all the help you can get to achieve a respectable appearance. Your father expects it. Our guests expect it. Your family demands it." The argument was brief but sharp, punctuated by her increasingly frustrated pronouncements about appearances and family reputation, and my unyielding resolve to remain true to myself. When I finally descended the grand staircase 2 hours later, my hair simply pulled back in a sleek, no-fuss ponytail, and my makeup minimal. My mother's gaze was a chilling mixture of barely concealed fury and profound disappointment. "You are deliberately trying to embarrass this family," she spat, her words like ice shards, cutting deep. "I hope you are truly proud of this rebellion. It is a direct insult to everything we stand for." I wasn't proud yet, not in the triumphant way one might imagine, but for the first time, as I stepped out into the humid morning air, into the waiting Merceds, I wasn't ashamed. My modified dress, my simple hair, it was all me, and in that moment, for the very first time, that felt like it was enough. June 12th arrived, a sweltering Boston day, the air thick with humidity that promised to wilt any meticulously styled coiffure or elegant dress. We pulled up to the high school auditorium in my father's sleek black Mercedes, a vehicle that, like everything else in our lives, exuded an air of understated, expensive prestige. My mother, in a bespoke designer dress the color of a summer sky, and Leo, looking impossibly sophisticated in a tailored suit, exited the car with the practiced elegance of a concert duo taking the stage. Their movements were fluid, confident, perfectly synchronized. My father, in his customary three-piece suit, strode ahead, his presence commanding attention, his handshake firm for anyone who approached. I followed behind, feeling like an uninvited guest at my own main event, my pale blue dress already beginning to cling uncomfortably in the heat, despite my alterations. Even my simple ponytail felt heavy against my neck, a damp weight. As we walked through the throng of graduating students and their families, a buzzing hive of excitement and proud parental gazes, I could feel the familiar weight of scrutiny, the subtle stares, the whispered judgments. That's the Reed girl who's going into engineering. Such a shame, with all that musical talent in the family, isn't it? She really doesn't carry herself like a Reed, does she? No grace, no elegance. My mother, ever attuned to public perception, ever vigilant about the family image, stiffly turned to me just before we entered the auditorium. Her hand, cool and firm, gripped my arm. "Isabella," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the excited chatter, yet piercingly clear to me, "please try to maintain a dignified posture during your walk across the stage. Shoulders back, chin up, and remember to smile. A genuine, pleasant smile, darling, not that strained one you often adopt." Her words were a familiar sting, a reminder that even on a day meant to celebrate my academic achievement, my physical presentation, my conformity to their aesthetic ideals, was paramount. I found my assigned seat among the other honor students, the designated section for the academically elite. A small, polite distance seemed to form around me, a subtle, unspoken cordon. Despite my valedictorian title and a GPA that towered over most of my classmates, a testament to countless late nights and unwavering dedication, I remained a social anomaly. A quiet intellectual in a school that often valued popularity, athletic prowess, and traditional accomplishments more than obscure academic passions. The whispers continued, a low, persistent hum of judgment that seemed to follow me like an unwelcome shadow. During the lengthy ceremony, as speaker after speaker offered platitudes about the future, the importance of seizing opportunities, and the significance of following one's dreams, my mind drifted, seeking refuge in my own thoughts. It landed on the exhilaration of the robotics competition from earlier in the year. That was where I felt truly seen, truly alive, truly understood. My team and I had spent months perfecting our autonomous navigation system, poring over lines of complex code, soldering intricate circuits until our fingers ached, troubleshooting problems that seemed insurmountable. When our robot flawlessly navigated the obstacle course, executing its tasks with elegant precision, securing us the national championship, the roar of the crowd had been exhilarating, a symphony of genuine appreciation. My parents, of course, had been present, sitting in the front row, but their applause had been polite, almost perfunctory, a formality rather than a celebration. "Very clever, dear," my mother had said afterwards, her tone tinged with a faint, almost imperceptible disapproval. "But it does make a rather peculiar whirring sound, doesn't it? Not exactly melodic, is it?" My father, ever the pragmatic one in their artistic world, had simply added, with a dismissive wave of his hand, "Perhaps you can apply this skill to something more substantial, something with a real cultural impact, Isabella, like a sound system for a concert hall." Even then, their inability to truly appreciate my triumphs, to see the artistry in my engineering, felt like a discordant note in my own personal symphony, a persistent off-key hum. My turn came, sooner than I expected, pulling me abruptly from my thoughts. As valedictorian, I walked to the podium, the spotlight momentarily blinding me, the applause polite but reserved. My speech, meticulously crafted over weeks, was not about traditional success or societal expectations, but about the profound beauty of unconventional paths, the courage it takes to pursue one's authentic passions, even if they diverge sharply from the expected. "True innovation," I began, my voice a little shaky at first, but gaining confidence with each carefully chosen word, "doesn't always follow a score. Sometimes it writes its own unexpected melody, a harmony born of logic and daring." I spoke passionately of the elegance of algorithms, the quiet poetry of code, the transformative power of logical thought, and the boundless possibilities that lay beyond the familiar. Midway through my speech, as I spoke of finding beauty in unexpected places, a snicker echoed loudly from the front rows. It was from Liam Davies, a classmate whose family had extensive ties to the Boston Symphony Orchestra, a boy who had always mocked my nerd interests, whose disdain for anything outside his privileged musical world was palpable. Is she seriously lecturing us about unconventional paths? Someone tell her to get a hobby that doesn't involve robots, he muttered loudly enough for a significant portion of the audience to hear. A wave of nervous laughter rippled through a section of the audience, like an unwelcome ripple in a still pond, and I saw my mother's face tighten, her expression a mix of profound embarrassment and thinly veiled anger. My cheeks burned with mortification, a hot flush spreading across my face, and I stumbled over a few words, my carefully rehearsed cadence momentarily lost. I could feel my father's intense stare from the audience, a silent, telepathic command to regain my composure, to not embarrass the family further. I finished my speech, my voice a little hoarse, my heart aching with a familiar pang of isolation. After the ceremony, during the seemingly endless rounds of family photographs, the professional photographer hired by my parents seemed to struggle visibly with my presence. He kept trying to pose me, to fix me. Perhaps a little more life in your eyes, dear, he'd suggest, his voice strained, a polite mask covering his frustration. And could you maybe stand slightly behind Leo? He really captures the essence of the Reed family, the musicality. My mother, her patience clearly wearing thin from the humidity and the perceived imperfections of the day, muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear, "For heaven's sake, just Photoshop her later. Focus on Leo. He's the one who matters in these pictures." Each click of the camera felt like a judgment, a confirmation that I was the awkward, unphotogenic anomaly in their perfectly composed family portrait, a flaw in their carefully constructed image. As Leo beamed, holding his prized cello and looking every inch the prodigy, I stood stiffly beside him, a stark contrast in my ill-fitting, modified dress, feeling like an afterthought, a poorly rendered background detail in their vibrant musical masterpiece. The air was thick with the cloying scent of wilting flowers and unspoken expectations, and all I wanted was to escape the suffocating performance, to disappear into a world where I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't. The graduation party was not a celebration of my accomplishments. It was another meticulously orchestrated performance designed to showcase the Reed family's unwavering social standing, and more specifically, Leo's burgeoning musical career. Our opulent backyard, usually reserved for quiet garden strolls, was transformed into a sophisticated outdoor reception area, replete with strings of fairy lights, elegantly draped white linen, and a crystal-clear sound system playing classical music. A live string quartet, composed of Leo's friends from his various youth orchestras, provided background music, their melodies weaving through the polite chatter. Caterers in crisp white uniforms circulated with silver trays, serving an array of gourmet canapés and artisanal cheeses. I had been instructed to change into another equally uncomfortable, albeit more festive, dress, a form-fitting emerald green creation that my mother assured me would bring out the color in your eyes, but which mostly just made me feel constricted, self-conscious, and painfully aware of every curve. My role, I soon realized, was to stand dutifully at the entrance to the garden, offering polite smiles and constrained hellos, while my parents deftly steered conversations towards Leo's jeweliered scholarship, his upcoming European tour, and the impressive list of famous musicians he had already performed with. Our son, the virtuoso, my father would beam to impressed guests, his chest puffed with pride. A true artist, Isabella, carrying on the family legacy with such dedication. My MIT acceptance, if mentioned at all, was a fleeting footnote, usually accompanied by a dismissive wave of my father's hand and a vague comment about Isabella's unique interests, almost as if it were a peculiar, slightly embarrassing hobby. I even overheard him tell a distant relative that my full tuition scholarship was a nice little bonus for a peculiar hobby, carefully omitting the crucial fact that it covered only tuition, not living expenses or supplies, details I had deliberately not corrected, not wanting to give them another reason to dismiss me. Seeking refuge from the incessant musical chatter and polite fawning, which felt increasingly suffocating, I retreated to a quiet corner near the fragrant rose bushes, where the sounds of the string quartet were muffled by the dense foliage and I could finally breathe. From my secluded vantage point, I saw Leo, surrounded by a gaggle of his music school friends and a few of my parents' most influential associates, their faces illuminated by the glow of his phone, punctuated by bursts of uproarious laughter. A cold dread, sharp and sudden, began to creep up my spine. My stomach churned with a sickening premonition as I edged closer, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. With growing horror, I realized what they were looking at. Leo was showing off my senior project, the intricate, autonomous drone I had spent over a year designing and coding. The very project that had not only helped me secure my MIT acceptance, but also won a national robotics championship. But these weren't the professional demonstration videos. These were raw, unedited footage from early prototypes, embarrassing failures captured during my learning process. The drone crashing clumsily into walls, getting hopelessly tangled in tree branches, or simply refusing to take off, lying inert and pathetic on the grass. He said even he couldn't make this thing fly straight? Leo scoffed, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air, loud with cruel triumph, a malicious smirk playing on his lips. His friend, a cello rival named Marcus, a notoriously arrogant and untalented musician, guffawed, shaking his head. Seriously, this is Isabella's groundbreaking work. My 4-year-old could build a better paper airplane. Another girl, a talented violinist named Chloe, whose perfectly coiffed hair and delicate features always seemed to mock my own lack of conventional beauty, leaned in and suggested, her voice dripping with false concern, "You should totally upload these to the conservatory group chat, Leo. The contrast with your Juilliard acceptance would be hilarious. It would really put things in perspective." Leo smirked, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction, confirming my worst fears. "Already done," he announced with a flourish of his phone, as if he were taking a final bow after a flawless performance. "I created a whole album called Reed Family Embarrassment, Isabella's Clankers. It's going viral in our school's private chat and probably beyond." The world tilted beneath my feet. I stumbled backward, clutching my own phone with trembling fingers, my vision blurred by unshed tears. A quick search confirmed my worst fears. A shared album, populated with my most unflattering failures, accumulating a torrent of cruel comments from Leo's friends, and even some older acquaintances who followed the Reed family's social circles. They were calling me the engineer who can't build, the mechanical misfit, a stain on the Reed name, the girl who brings shame to the Reed melody. I fled, the laughter and cruel comments echoing in my ears, chasing me like a phantom chorus, making a desperate, stumbling dash towards the house, seeking the fleeting sanctuary of the nearest bathroom. I collapsed onto the cool, tiled floor, muffling my sobs against my arm, the humiliation burning hotter than any fever, a searing pain that far surpassed any physical discomfort. A few minutes later, a polite but insistent knock sounded on the door. It was my mother. "Isabella, darling, are you all right? You've been gone for ages. Our guests are asking for you," she said, her voice laced with an edge of annoyance, her concern more for appearances than for my well-being. I stumbled to my feet, my face blotchy and tear-streaked, my eyes red-rimmed. "Mother," I choked out, the words catching in my throat. "Leo, he's showing humiliating videos of my projects. He made an album called Reed Family Embarrassment. He's mocking me publicly." Her expression, usually so composed, so perfect, shifted, betraying a flicker of discomfort, a fleeting moment of recognition, but it quickly hardened into a mask of cold, unyielding disapproval. "Oh, that," she said, her voice utterly dismissive, as if this were a minor inconvenience. "Yes, well, they're not the most flattering demonstrations, are they? But that's hardly Leo's fault, Isabella. Perhaps if your projects were a little less chaotic, a little more polished, he wouldn't feel the need to lighten the mood, to find humor in your efforts." She actually handed me a powder compact, her hand perfectly manicured. "Now fix your face, darling. You're looking rather disheveled. And come back out. Your father is looking for you. He's quite displeased with your absence." My world imploded. She wouldn't make him take them down. She wouldn't even acknowledge the depth of the cruelty, the public humiliation. "What's done is done," she said, as if my profound distress, my shattered dignity, was merely a minor inconvenience in the grand scheme of their perfect party. I felt a profound chill, a deep, bone-aching realization that my own mother, the woman who was supposed to protect me, would sacrifice my dignity, my well-being, for the sake of her perfect family image, for the facade of their harmonious existence. Slipping out through the back door, unnoticed in the twilight, I found myself in the old, neglected garden shed, hidden from the dazzling lights and the cheerful chatter. The cool darkness offered a temporary balm to my raw wounds, a quiet sanctuary from their orchestrated cruelty. There, surrounded by dusty gardening tools and the faint scent of damp earth, I finally broke down completely. Years of suppressed pain, emotional neglect, and unacknowledged effort pouring out in racking, silent sobs. As twilight deepened, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a quiet, fierce resolve solidified within me, hardening my core. I couldn't live like this anymore. Even if it meant losing everything, truly everything, I would choose myself. The morning after my graduation party, the air in our elegant home felt thick with an unspoken accusation, heavier than the lingering scent of champagne and wilting roses. The previous night's forced gaiety had evaporated, leaving behind a chilling silence. My parents, Alara and Julian Reed, radiated an icy calm that was far more unnerving than any shouting match, their faces set in grim masks of disappointment. They called a family meeting in my father's opulent study, a room usually reserved for important legal documents and the solemn discussions of family investments. Leo sat beside them on a plush leather armchair, a smug, unrepentant smirk playing on his lips, as if he had just delivered the final, triumphant note of a difficult concerto, secure in his perceived victory. My father, in his practiced, legalistic tone that he used for his most important clients, began without preamble, his voice devoid of warmth, cold as marble. "Isabella," he stated, his gaze piercing, unwavering, "your behavior last night, fleeing the party, your unseemly outburst in the garden shed, it was a profound embarrassment to this family. A public display of disrespect. It undermines everything we have built." My mother nodded in solemn agreement, her expression one of profound, almost theatrical disappointment, as if I had personally sullied the Reed name. "You consistently fail to meet the Reed family's standards, Isabella. Standards of grace, of conduct, of artistic sensibility. You refuse to understand your place." I tried to explain again, to defend myself, to articulate the depth of the humiliation I had suffered at Leo's hands, the searing sting of being publicly mocked by my own brother, with my mother's silent, implicit complicity. I spoke, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion, of the countless hours, the years, I had poured into my projects, into honing my intellect, only to have them casually dismissed and cruelly ridiculed. "You ignored my accomplishments, Mother. You let Leo humiliate me. He called my work clankers and broadcast my failures for everyone to see," I cried, my voice cracking with desperation. But my father cut me off with a sharp, decisive gesture of his hand, a peremptory dismissal. "Leo, unlike you, Isabella, understands what it means to uphold the Reed name. He embodies the very essence of our family's values, our artistic core. Your projects, as you so quaintly call them, are an anomaly, a distraction from your true potential, from the path you should be on." He then produced their solution, a thick, glossy brochure from a prestigious music conservatory in Switzerland, its pages filled with images of elegant concert halls and solemn, focused students. He pushed it across the polished mahogany desk towards me, its weight feeling like a stone in my hand. "We have, after much deliberation and consultation with our esteemed colleagues, decided on a comprehensive plan for your future," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of an unchallengeable verdict, a final decree. "You will enroll in the advanced piano program. It includes private lessons with Maestro Antonovich, intensive theory, and even a course in musical composition. It is," he concluded, his gaze firm, "an investment in your true self, Isabella. A chance for you to finally embrace the legacy you were born into, the legacy you are destined for." My mother chimed in, her voice unnervingly sweet, dripping with a false concern that only twisted the knife deeper. Think of it, darling. The refinement, the culture, the opportunity to truly belong to something meaningful. And of course, if you insist on this engineering pursuit, that is another discussion entirely. A far less pleasant one, I assure you. The implication hung heavy in the air, cold and unforgiving. It was an ultimatum, stark and brutal. My passion, my identity, my future, all reduced to a bargaining chip to be traded for their approval. And if I refuse? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the words feeling foreign on my tongue, though they articulated a desperate hope for a different answer. My father's face hardened, his jaw clenching, his eyes narrowing into cold slits. Then we can no longer financially support you, Isabella. No tuition for other institutions, no living expenses, no family backing. You would, quite simply, be on your own. Completely alone. My mother added, her eyes gleaming with a chilling resolve. You cannot remain in this house, Isabella, if you insist on rejecting the very values upon which it was built. You cannot be a reed and refuse to sing our song. You cannot be a part of our family and pursue such unbecoming interests. Disbelief warred with a bitter, agonizing understanding. They were disowning me. Not for a crime, not for a moral failing, not for anything truly malicious, but for daring to have a mind that thought differently, a heart that beat to a different rhythm. My academic brilliance, my passion for innovation, my national award, all of it meant nothing in the face of their musical dogma, their obsession with appearances and lineage. You're disowning me over choosing my own path. Over my intelligence? I asked, the words raw, tearing through my throat, the full weight of their profound betrayal crashing down on me, suffocating me. My father scoffed, a contemptuous sound that dismissed my very existence. Don't be so dramatic, Isabella. We are offering you a choice. A choice to embrace your true potential, to return to the path of beauty and culture, and to remain a cherished part of this family. The decision, dear, is entirely yours. We are simply setting clear boundaries. Something within me snapped. Years of bottled-up frustration, of being the ignored, the ridiculed, the unmusical one, of being forced to perform a role that was not my own, burst forth like a dam breaking. I rose from my chair, my body trembling, but my voice, though still shaky, gained strength with each defiant word. My path is not the problem, I declared, my gaze sweeping across their unyielding faces, daring to meet their cold stares. This family is the problem. You have spent my entire life making me feel worthless, criticizing my passions, dismissing my intellect, and comparing me to Leo at every turn. You allowed my own brother to publicly humiliate me last night, and you stand here now, demanding I conform to your shallow, antiquated ideals of artistry. This isn't about my potential. It's about your control, your ego. You're not offering me a choice. You're demanding my surrender. I told them, my voice rising, that I had accepted my MIT admission weeks ago, not for their money, but for my own dreams, for my own freedom. And that I would go, with or without your financial backing. I would rather live in a cardboard box than spend another day trying to meet your impossible standards, your ridiculous expectations. My father, his face now a mask of cold fury, thundered, "How dare you speak to us with such disrespect? Such insolence?" But I was beyond caring, beyond fear. What exactly have you done for me, Father? Criticized my choices, compared me to Leo, made me feel like I am never good enough. That isn't love. That's emotional abuse. That's manipulation. His eyes blazed with a terrifying mixture of rage and wounded pride, his face contorted into a mask of barely contained fury. "You have 2 weeks, Isabella," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, laced with an unmistakable threat. 2 weeks to reconsider your insolence, to come to your senses. Either you agree to the conservatory, or you find somewhere else to live. Your trust fund, should you ever come to your senses and choose the path we have laid for you, will be frozen until you comply. Completely, not a single cent. As Leo watched with a smug, satisfied expression, a chilling confirmation of his complicity, my mother, her face pale with anger, stood. "This conversation is over. We are leaving for our summer retreat in the Hamptons tomorrow morning. You have 2 weeks to make your decision, Isabella. And if you choose poorly, do not expect to find us here upon our return. Do not expect to find anything at all." With that, They swept out of the study, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence, the heavy wooden door closing with a definitive thud that echoed in the vast room. Before I left the study, my gaze fell upon Leo's phone, left carelessly on the corner of my father's desk. The screen was still open to a chat application, and a recent message from him caught my eye, a final, crushing blow. It read, "Just told Isabella about freezing her trust fund and the ultimatum. Mom and Dad are totally on board. Looks like she's finally getting what she deserves for thinking she's smarter than all of us, for trying to be different. She won't last a week without us." My stomach churned, the cold, stark truth of their collaborative betrayal, Leo's active participation in my downfall, hitting me harder than any physical blow. They truly meant to break me. That afternoon, while my parents were out making final, seemingly carefree preparations for their Hamptons retreat, their laughter echoing from downstairs, I moved with a quiet, determined resolve, a new, steely purpose driving my every action. I methodically packed my few essential belongings into 2 old, worn suitcases and a tattered backpack. A shockingly small collection for 18 years of life lived in luxury. My entire world, reduced to a few changes of clothes, my precious laptop, a handful of beloved, dog-eared textbooks, and a small toolbox filled with my most cherished screwdrivers and wires. I counted the meager cash in my emergency fund, a grand total of $312, painstakingly saved from odd coding jobs and tutoring sessions. It was barely enough to survive, but it was mine, earned with my own effort, untainted by their expectations. I immediately used a significant portion of it to book a bus ticket to Cambridge for the following morning, a one-way trip to an unknown future. Before I left, as the twilight crept into the study, I composed a short, defiant note, my hand surprisingly steady, leaving it on my father's meticulously organized desk, placed directly on top of the untouched Swiss conservatory brochure. "I choose my own path. Don't contact me. I am no longer your dissonance." There was no turning back. The next morning, before the city truly awoke, while the grand brownstone still slept in its opulent silence, I took one final, lingering look at the house that had been my gilded cage, my beautiful prison. I felt no sorrow, no regret, only a profound sense of relief, a lightness I had never known. As I walked towards the bus station, my footsteps light despite the heavy suitcases that weighed down my arms, I knew I was stepping into an uncertain future, a future filled with challenges and unknowns. But it was a future that, finally, was truly my own, a melody I would compose myself. The journey to Cambridge on that gray, humid morning felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Every mile the bus covered was a mile further from the suffocating expectations of the Reed household, a mile closer to a life where my intellect, not my family's musical heritage, would define me. The landscape blurred past the window, a canvas of green and concrete, mirroring the tumultuous thoughts in my mind. When I finally arrived, the vibrant, chaotic energy of a college town, even during summer break, was a stark contrast to the sterile perfection I had left behind. There was a raw, unpolished energy to Cambridge that felt liberating, a sense of possibility in every bustling street and independent coffee shop. But the initial exhilaration quickly gave way to the harsh realities of my new independence. My $312 dwindled alarmingly fast, eaten up by bus fare, a few cheap meals, and the terrifying realization of how expensive basic survival truly was. Food became a luxury, a treat rather than a necessity, and shelter became my most immediate and pressing concern. I spent my first few nights on park benches, huddled under my thin jacket, the unfamiliar sounds of the city replacing the quiet comfort of my old bedroom. The fear was a constant companion, a cold, gnawing knot in my stomach, a persistent whisper of what if? I realized quickly that my romanticized idea of striking out on my own hadn't accounted for the brutal, unforgiving practicality of survival. There were no grand solos here, only the hardscrabble reality of making it day to day. My original plan to immediately enroll at MIT was a pipe dream, a naively optimistic fantasy shattered by the cold, hard facts of my financial situation. Without a stable address or consistent income, deferring my admission became the only viable option. The admissions office, though sympathetic to my unusual circumstances and clearly impressed by my academic record, could offer little concrete help beyond a list of local shelters and a few job boards. The initial disappointment was crushing, a wave of despair that threatened to drown my nascent hope. I had envisioned myself immediately immersed in the world of advanced robotics and artificial intelligence, surrounded by brilliant minds, not searching for a safe place to sleep each night, my stomach empty. Depression, a heavy, suffocating shroud, began to settle over me, dulling the edges of my ambition. The constant stress of homelessness, the lack of proper nutrition, and the pervasive anxiety took their insidious toll, chipping away at my resolve. Ironically, the very appearance my family had been so obsessed with, my physical presentation, began to deteriorate rapidly. My skin broke out in painful patches, my hair became dull and lank, and dark, persistent circles perpetually shadowed my eyes. I was a walking testament to the cruel irony of their abandonment. They cared so much about how I looked, yet their actions had forced me into a state where looking good was the least of my worries, a trivial concern in the face of genuine hardship. I took any job I could find, desperate for even a pittance of income. Washing dishes in a greasy diner with perpetually sticky floors, stocking shelves in an all-night grocery store where the fluorescent lights hummed a ceaseless, monotonous tune, cleaning offices in the early hours before the city woke up, the silence punctuated only by the whir of the vacuum. Each shift was physically exhausting, pushing my body to its limits. But the relentless grind, the sheer necessity of survival, kept my mind from dwelling too much on my isolation, on the crushing weight of my newfound solitude. Sleep was a precious commodity, snatched in library chairs during the day or on overnight buses when I could afford the fare, rocking gently to the rhythm of the road. I lived paycheck to agonizing paycheck, often skipping meals or buying only the cheapest, most nutrient-efficient food to save enough for a cheap hostel bed for a night, or a laundromat visit to wash my few threadbare clothes. The loneliness was profound, a deep ache in my chest that no amount of busyness could erase. My old high school friends, those who had been aware of my family's eccentricities and my quiet nature, quickly faded away. Their lives were moving on, neatly packaged, progressing along predictable paths, while mine had shattered into a million sharp pieces, scattered to the wind. My college peers, those who had once admired my intellect during high school competitions, were now either away for the summer, oblivious to my struggles, or too busy with their own privileged lives to notice my sudden disappearance, my fall from grace. I was completely alone, navigating a world I was utterly unprepared for, armed only with my fierce resilience, a stubborn refusal to give up, and the lingering echoes of Mr. Davies' belief in my unconventional talents. As Thanksgiving approached, a profound wave of homesickness, tinged with a desperate, almost pathetic hope, washed over me. Perhaps, I thought, time had softened their hearts. Perhaps my sudden, stark absence had made them realize the depth of their cruelty, the severity of their ultimatum. I desperately wanted to believe they missed me, that they regretted their decision, that a shred of parental affection remained. I found a public computer in a quiet corner of the library and drafted a carefully worded email to my parents, an olive branch, a tentative reach for reconciliation. I poured out my struggles, not to elicit pity, but to convey the raw reality of my situation, to show them the devastating consequences of their actions. "I'm still pursuing my engineering dreams," I wrote, my fingers trembling over the keyboard, "but it's been harder than I ever imagined without your support. I hope you're well. I miss you. And Leo." I clicked send, my heart pounding with a fragile, almost unbearable hope. The reply came quickly, almost instantly, but it wasn't the one I had longed for, the one I had prayed for. My email bounced back, stamped with a stark, impersonal message. "Recipient unknown." They had changed their email addresses. My stomach dropped, a cold, sickening sensation. I tried Leo's email, the one I knew he used for all his jeweliered correspondence. Same result. My old family landline numbers were disconnected, replaced by unknown numbers. Desperate, clinging to the last vestiges of hope, I wrote a physical letter to our old address, pouring out my soul onto paper, detailing the hardships, expressing my longing for even a glimmer of their affection, a sign that I still existed to them. Weeks later, the letter was returned to me, stamped with a stark final message, no longer at this address. The post office had simply sent it back. They hadn't just disowned me financially, they had actively, systematically erased me. They had severed every single tie, every potential avenue for contact, leaving me truly orphaned, adrift and alone in a world that felt impossibly vast, cold, and indifferent. The realization was a devastating blow, a final, unequivocal confirmation of their ultimate betrayal. I was not just disowned, I was forgotten. They had truly silenced my symphony, cut the wires, leaving me unplugged and unseen. The discovery that my family had systematically erased me from their lives, scrubbing away every trace of my existence, was not merely a moment of pain. It was a profound turning point. The initial agony was excruciating, a raw, lacerating wound of abandonment that cut deeper than any physical hardship I had endured on the streets. The fragile, persistent hope for reconciliation, for their eventual acceptance, for a shred of love, finally died, leaving behind a cold, unyielding resolve. In that void of emotional desolation, something hardened within me, a steel core forming where vulnerability once lay. I would not just survive. I would thrive, not for them, not to gain their validation, but for myself, for the brilliant, unconventional mind they had so carelessly discarded. Their deliberate act of severing all ties, of making me an unperson, fueled a fierce, unquenchable determination to prove them wrong, not by seeking their validation, but by building a life that was undeniably my own, a testament to my unbowed spirit, my uncompromised intellect. I was truly free, unshackled from their suffocating expectations, their dismissive judgments, and their rigid, melodic legacy. This profound freedom, though born of immense pain and loss, became my greatest asset, my secret weapon. I doubled down on my efforts, channeling every ounce of my grief and anger into focused, relentless action. The long nights working multiple minimum wage jobs continued, the exhaustion a familiar companion, but now they were punctuated by stolen, precious moments of intense study. I would spend hours hunched over textbooks in the public library, devouring advanced engineering concepts, practicing complex coding problems on public computers, and watching online lectures on obscure theoretical physics. I befriended a kind, elderly librarian named Martha, who, seeing my dedication and my desperate circumstances, often allowed me to use the computers after closing hours, a quiet act of grace that meant the world to me. My goal was clear, a beacon in the darkness. Reapply to MIT, stronger, smarter, and with a resilience forged in the crucible of adversity. My old robotics team from high school, upon hearing about my situation through hushed whispers that eventually reached them, rumors that had traveled from Wellesley to the fringes of Cambridge, rallied around me with unexpected loyalty. They offered me their old notes, shared job leads for odd tech gigs, anything from building custom PCs to troubleshooting network issues for small businesses, and even let me crash on their couches for a few nights when they could, a small but vital network of genuine support in a world that had felt so hostile, so indifferent. Their unwavering belief in my intellect and my passion for engineering, so different from my family's dismissals, became a vital lifeline, a constant reminder of my worth. After a grueling year of relentless work and self-study, my persistence finally paid off, a quiet triumph echoing louder than any concert hall applause. I secured a new, stronger scholarship that not only covered tuition, but also a significant portion of my living expenses, recognizing my unique circumstances, my academic tenacity, and my unwavering commitment. I reapplied to MIT, armed with a year's worth of real-world experience, a portfolio brimming with new, innovative projects I had secretly worked on, and a personal essay that detailed my journey with raw honesty, a testament to the depths of my struggle and the heights of my ambition. The admissions committee, deeply impressed by my tenacity, my unconventional path, and the sheer grit I had demonstrated, readmitted me. The acceptance letter this time felt profoundly different, not a fragile hope, but a hard-earned victory, a testament to my own power. Stepping onto the vibrant MIT campus as a full-time student felt like a homecoming, a reclamation of my intellectual birthright, a triumphant return to a world where I truly belonged. I thrived in the rigorous academic environment, finally surrounded by peers and brilliant professors who spoke my language, who valued innovation and logical thought above all else, who saw the beauty in code and the elegance in complex systems. My past struggles, rather than hindering me, had sharpened my focus, instilled in me an unparalleled work ethic, and taught me the invaluable lesson of self-reliance, of finding strength within myself when all external support vanished. My relationships with my former high school robotics team blossomed, deepening into a true, unbreakable found family. They visited often, celebrating my small victories, a perfect score on an exam, a successful project demo, and I, in turn, supported their various academic and personal pursuits, offering advice, a listening ear, or just a shared meal. We built new projects together, pushing the boundaries of technology, fueled by a shared passion for innovation and a sense of camaraderie that transcended superficial expectations. As for my biological family, they remained a distant memory, a painful but ultimately fading echo, like a forgotten tune. I learned through casual conversations with old acquaintances from Wellesley that Leo had indeed enjoyed some initial success, performing in smaller concert halls, but his career was punctuated by public struggles with performance anxiety and burnout, perhaps a tragic consequence of the immense, suffocating pressure he had always been under to maintain the Reed legacy. My parents continued to live in their opulent, music-filled world, seemingly oblivious to the incredible life I was building, brick by painful, glorious brick. A life forged on my own terms. My story doesn't have a fairy tale ending where family wounds are magically healed, or where a sudden, dramatic reunion brings tears and apologies. My relationship with Leo is non-existent, and my parents remain on the periphery, completely unaware of my life, my triumphs, my very existence. But that's okay. The happy ending isn't about them. It's about me and the life I've created on my own terms, a life where my algorithm sings freely. 7 years ago, they ignored my MIT acceptance and disowned me for refusing to abandon my passion, for daring to choose logic over their beloved melody. Today, I know that what they saw as my greatest flaw, my independent mind, my passion for technology, became the very foundation of my greatest strength. The ability to see beyond superficial expectations and to value what truly matters: truth, logic, and the boundless potential of human ingenuity. Have you ever experienced a similar situation or felt similar feelings of being misunderstood or disowned for your true passions? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched something in you, if it resonated with the quiet, persistent hum of your own inner truth, please make sure to subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to hear that sometimes. The most beautiful melodies are written not with instruments, but with algorithms of resilience. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth lies not in the expectations of others, but in your mind, your heart, your resilience, and your unique contributions to this world.